What if I write you something that's not very thoughtful?
Then I will drag it into sane black hole, and it will never be seen from again.
Welcome to the Active Marketer Podcast, where we talk about how to design, automate, and scale your business to the next level using sales and marketing automation. You can find out all the tips, tactics, and techniques you need to get more customers and sell more stuff over at theactivemarketer.com. Now, here's your host, Barry Moore.
Welcome to the Active Marketer Podcast, the podcast that's all about sales funnels and marketing automation. This week, we're continuing our payment series. So for the past few weeks, we've been talking about how to come up with requirements for a payment platform. We've interviewed a few founders of some different payment platforms, but those platforms have been mostly focused around informational products or digital products or one-off sales. You know, you want product A, you buy product A. So now we're going to move into a little bit of a different territory where we're going to talk about the more traditional shopping cart platforms where you might want to grab product A, product B, and product C, put it all in your cart, and then check out the whole cart at the end of the process. So this week I've got Kurt Elster, the host of the unofficial Shopify podcast, and he also runs an agency, an e-commerce agency over there at ethercycle.com. And he's going to talk to us all about the Shopify platform, what he likes about it, and who it would be right for. So let's get into this week's episode with Kurt Elster. And I'd like to welcome to the show Kurt Elster from the unofficial Shopify podcast. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you for having me. It's my honor and pleasure.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this episode. I played with Shopify maybe a couple of years ago, but I haven't really touched it much since then. And I've really been looking forward to, one, talking to somebody who really knows it back to front, and two, getting in touch with the platform again, because I know it's a fantastic platform. I know you work exclusively with Shopify as a platform. Why exclusively Shopify?
So originally, years ago, we were a generalist web design agency, and we were doing primarily WordPress work, actually. But our most satisfying work was in e-commerce because you could quantify the results. And it's what, it's fun. And when you work on a project where it's like, oh, that's a product I'd buy, it makes it a lot more fun. So I said, we should only do e-commerce. And then within e-commerce, we worked on several platforms. We played with Magento and BigCommerce and Lemon Stand and Shopify, and consistently the best experience by far was Shopify. And a big part of it is not any feature that has to do with Shopify, but their community. And as I've gotten deeper into it, it's because Shopify, it's like as part of their company culture, is fostering this whole network and ecosystem and community around the platform. That's really just been phenomenal.
Yeah, cool. And for those listeners out there who aren't familiar with Shopify, how would you describe Shopify to them?
Shopify is a hosted e-commerce solution. It's a one-and-done service for their standard pricing for their big boy package, $79 a month, and you don't have to worry about hosting, security, upgrades, checkout processes, any of that stuff. It's all handled through Shopify, so it's very, very holistic end-to-end e-commerce solution to sell your e-commerce products.
Yeah, so far we've been, in the payment series, we've been talking about, how you can bolt payments onto your existing site, for example, with
so you can actually,
Samcart or whatever.
You can do that with Shopify. Yeah. They've added, they keep adding new features, some nice new features. And one is, if you're a bricks and mortar store, they've got a point of sale system. Well, since then, they also added buy buttons. So if you have an existing store, there's a much cheaper Shopify plan. I think it's less than $20 a month, but you could just you could put products in it, generate buy buttons with it, and then just embed those buy buttons into your website and then still benefit from Shopify's inventory and checkout processes.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. For those unfamiliar with the platform, if you were just starting, you had no website, you had no anything, Shopify is the whole matzah. You don't have to go and set up WordPress. You don't have to do anything. Shopify is the entire solution for the business. And as you said, if you want to combine that with a retail store where you have a retail store already, you can use that for point of sale. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, they've got a nice point of sale system that just works out of the box. At this point, it's a complete e-commerce platform.
And what would be some of your favorite features or favorite things about Shopify that really set it apart from some of the other ones you mentioned?
Number one, by far is the community, the reliability. Having used a whole bunch of these platforms, really you want something much like why people buy Apple products and they pay that premium. They want something that just works. And in my experience of the e-commerce platforms, Shopify is the one that just works. So if you ever have an issue, you could just call them. They have a toll-free number perfectly, and they've got live chat and all these experts and this great community. But I've had to call them, I think exactly once in working on over 100 stores. I've literally only ever had an actual technical bug that involved me calling the support line one time.
And there's similar to Apple, there's a whole kind of ecosystem behind Shopify as well with additional add-ons and extensions and plugins and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an app store. So there's lots of features you can add a la carte, and some of the apps are free and some are one time and some are subscription. So that is, I would say that's one cautionary item is the monthly payment can balloon if you start just adding app after app after app. But, if you're just doing things based on their ROI, based on what features you need in your store, then it's really beneficial because you don't have all this bloat. You have only exactly what you need. And they have a theme store that they're really brutal about picking very well-made themes. I think they only add 1 or 2 new themes a month out of the hundreds of submissions they get. So you never have to worry if you're going to get a buggy theme that hasn't been tested cross-device or cross-browser. And then they just produce enormous amounts of helpful content through their partner network. They've reached out to me and they've solicited blog posts from me. They've got a free book they put out that I've got a chapter in the first volume, and they paid me for that. They're more than happy to invest in the community to be able to help their merchants.
And what would be some of the more common, widely used apps that people tend to plug into Shopify?
I think my favorite is Bold Apps Product Upsell. And Bold Apps is one of the largest app developers for Shopify. And Product Upsell, when someone, if someone purchases product X, so let's say someone purchases a digital camera, then as they get to checkout, a modal window pops open and says, hey, would you want to buy a tripod, say? And then it's a great, easy, inexpensive way to improve that customer's experience and to increase your average order value or the customer's lifetime value. So Bold Apps Product Upsell is a good one. Another common one, people want to add predictable recurring revenue to their business. Who doesn't? And in e-commerce, the best way to do that is probably with subscriptions. Right. So there's a great app, Bold App Subscriptions, or another one called Recharge that makes it very easy to add subscriptions seamlessly to your store.
Oh, that was kind of going to be my next question. I guess that, with Shopify, most people, or at least I do anyway, think of Shopify as more of a traditional kind of physical products type solution. Is it good for information products as well? Or
they do sell
memberships and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you could sell, I don't know about memberships. Honestly, for memberships, I would probably use WordPress for that, truthfully. I guess it depends what the membership is. For info products, they do digital downloads. I know for a while, I don't know, still I haven't looked in a while, but A Book Apart, Happy Cogs library publishing company, was on Shopify delivering that mix of ebooks and physical goods. Shamefully, I sell a couple info products, and I sell them on Gumroad instead of Shopify. However, I've had issues with Gumroad with deliverability on my subscription service. So had I do it over again, I probably would use Shopify.
And another question I had about Shopify, if Shopify is your whole kind of solution, your whole website, if you will, what about content marketing? How is that kind of done with a Shopify store?
So it's got a full content management system built into it. So you can add multiple blogs. So you could you could silo content within blogs. You could have multiple authors. They've got nice SEO features built into it now. I think the SEO is probably, if you're comparing it, the quickest thing you can compare it to is Squarespace. I'd say it edges out Squarespace SEO wise. And then it also includes nice resources for creating pages in a WYSIWYG on the site.
All right, cool. So you don't need to bolt on another WordPress blog or something to do your content marketing with. That's cool.
No, certainly not.
Okay. Now you've seen, through your agency, EtherCycle, you've seen lots of people come through the Shopify life cycle, I guess you call it. So who is it best suited for? Who's like the ideal person to be using Shopify?
Well, so I'm biased in who my favorite kind of client to work with is.
Fair enough.
But all right, so I see a lot of people, you get the traditional thing is like, oh, I'm going to make T-shirts, or I make handmade jewelry. So you've got these little hobby stores that pop up. But a lot of, if you notice these like really big Kickstarter success stories, and several of them are my clients, end up on Shopify because Shopify scales with you. They've got all these different plans and features and those add-ons, which is great because you could start at this cheap, like $20-something a month plan and then move up as your business grows, all the way up to they have a full enterprise version of Shopify called Shopify Plus. And there's some Fortune 100 brands on Shopify Plus. So I think, sometimes people's fear is, oh, well, eventually I'll outgrow it and I'll have to replatform, and no one wants to replatform. And in Shopify, that's not the case. They've really worked quite hard in the last, say, 2 years to avoid that. But I'd say some typical people I see like Kickstarter successes, because it's very easy to spin up and then have it grow with you. And, people have private label businesses on Amazon. They start on Amazon, it's very successful. They validated it there, and then they move to Shopify and add that as a sales channel. Those are probably the three typical types.
And for those Amazon type people, are they still using, Fulfilled by Amazon in the back end? Does Shopify work with that well?
Yeah, it has native integration with Amazon. It's very simple. I think it's like 1 or 2 clicks to get it to work. Yeah. Fulfilled by Amazon works great with Shopify. And that way you can have it, run totally automated.
Nice. Which is what we love here at the Automation Central. So, yeah, speaking of that, it's a great segue, by the way. Thanks, Kurt. What about, in the back end of Shopify, as far as managing your customers and increasing lifetime value and repeat business? What kind of tools, apps, tricks of the trade are there for customer management and nurturing and that kind of stuff in the back of Shopify?
So there's wonderful reporting features. It's easy. There's a basic CRM system built into it, customer relationship management, where you could search for customers and see notes, record notes about them and see what purchases they made, and like what page they landed on before they made a purchase. But if you to get real power out of it, I think you still need to attach it to a proper email platform that lets you do some marketing automation, some lifecycle email or marketing automation. And I'm biased. My favorite is Klaviyo. Working with Klaviyo and Shopify works really well. A lot of people use MailChimp, but to get the real power of that marketing, you need to add on a mail service.
Yeah, of course. And so you've seen a lot of people get started as well. What are the kind of common mistakes that people make out of the box?
Oh, well, by far the number one mistake is if people think, if I build it, they will come. And of course, that isn't the case. So and I always warn them. I say, listen, we can obsess over details about this design and how the flow works and all that. But, and really, I think the best example of this is, when you're first launching the store, it defaults to having a password so no one could see it. And let's say, I take that password off, people panic. Like, oh, you took the password off, you got to put it back up. I said, listen, only you and I have ever seen the store. Yeah. If I launch it right now, only you and I will see the store. It takes a lot of effort to build that initial audience. So it's, and this is not endemic to Shopify. This is, true of launching any website. I'd really encourage people to, while you're building that site, to also be building your audience and your list. I think if you're online, if you have an online business of any kind, you are automatically in the list building business.
Couldn't agree more, my friend. That's the big asset, not your store, is that list, right? Once you've got a list,
absolutely,
or customers that you can sell to, then that doesn't matter how you sell to them, really. And so, well, that's a good question, actually. Is Shopify good for list building? I mean, you talked about it. We talked about it being the entire website. Do they have that kind of lead gen, opt in for a lead magnet type stuff here inside Shopify?
So it actually does. Most themes will have like a newsletter pop-up built into it, along with like an opt-in when people purchase, where they can opt into your marketing, and usually like an opt-in in the footer. So the basic and necessary email opt-ins, and then it'll just even if you aren't ready yet, you don't have an email system, you don't want to pay like $300 a month for Klaviyo or whatever. It will record those emails and all of that straight into the back end of Shopify. And then that way, if you, as you add an email system or migrate between email systems, all you have to do is sync the data between your email system and Shopify, and it'll all be there.
But can you create the more traditional kind of, landing page to, download my free guide to how to choose the best cycling shoes or something like that? You know what I mean? The top 5 cycling shoes, those traditional kind of lead magnets just to get people onto the list without not necessarily a generic newsletter opt-in?
I know how to do that, but I wouldn't say that Shopify would be, if that's what you're starting with, I wouldn't say Shopify would be a good fit for that. And when I've seen other people build sales funnels in that fashion with Shopify, I'm a front-end designer, front-end developer. So, I would just build that stuff as custom. But I've seen other people do it with Lead Pages or Optimunk, some kind of third party that they're using on top of Shopify.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And we kind of mentioned at the beginning when you started out, you were working across multiple platforms, and Magento and BigCommerce and stuff like that. So what is the advantage of Shopify over all the rest of them?
Oh, by far is reliability and their clarity of focus. I mean, at this point, I believe they're the number one tech company in Canada, and that stock is out of control. They're doing great. But no, I think their big asset is they don't just tack features on willy-nilly. The thing's never buggy, incredibly stable, but that community and that network that's growing around Shopify is where its real power is. You could build, essentially a system like BigCommerce is really just, Shopify. It is feels like a clone of Shopify in that it's like, oh, we've got all the features, we've got all that checklist. But I have clients who come from BigCommerce or come from other platforms, and it's always with complaints about it being unreliable, and that's just never a fear with Shopify.
All right, cool. So if someone's decided or they think Shopify might be for them, what are the kind of the first steps for them to get started?
Well, they've got there's a 14-day free trial, no risk, no credit card required. So you could spin up a Shopify store. You could play with it. You get familiar with the back end. You could preview themes. You could basically set up the store minus the domain name and being able to check out and really get a feel for it. I'd also recommend, of course, looking at other Shopify stores. Seeing what they look like that are Shopify stores that are in your space.
And what are some other good Shopify resources for the newbie?
Sure. If you go to, Shopify.com, they have a tab called Resources. They've got some guides, videos, podcasts, all that stuff there, and success stories. Or my own website, I have a resources library put together for Shopify store owners and other entrepreneurs. And that's ethercycle.com/resources.
Yeah, there's lots of great stuff over there. I was just having a look at that today. All right. Well, Kurt, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us your story behind why you love Shopify so much and who it's right for. And if people want to reach out to you, best place is ethercycle.com. Is that right?
Yeah, check out ethercycle.com or my personal website. If you want to email me, kurtelster.com, sign up for my newsletter, and then just reply to it, and I will see it. And if you write me something thoughtful, have questions, I'm happy to write back.
What if I write you something that's not very thoughtful?
Then I will drag it into sane black hole, and it will never be seen from again.
All right, fair enough. And by all means, check out the unofficial Shopify podcast for everything Shopify. Kurt, thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to seeing you online.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Kurt, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your background with Shopify. And if you're interested in Shopify, you're running an online store, Kurt also has an online e-commerce bootcamp, and he's generously offered to give listeners a 40% discount to that e-commerce bootcamp. So if you head over to the show notes at theactivemarketer.com/68, all the details on the coupon code and the link will be there. Also, if you need help with sales funnels and marketing automation, you're just not getting the results you want, you can join us at the Active Marketer Insiders, a private community where we teach the tactics that the big guys use to get results with their sales funnels. So if you head over there, you'll find training, checklists, shared automations, everything you need to get up and running quickly. That's over at theactivemarketer.com/members. And if you use the coupon code podcast, you'll get 15% discount on your membership. So we'll see you again next week with a little bit more of our payment series as we wrap it up. But in the meantime, get out there and design, automate, and scale your business to the next level using sales and marketing automation. See you next time, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Active Marketer Podcast. You can find the show notes and all the latest marketing automation news over at theactivemarketer.com.